The new Relic skill tree is incredible at enhancing your builds and gameplay in Cyberpunk 2077 with the arrival of Phantom Liberty and the 2.0 update. So today we're going to take a look at the best new perks in the brand new Relic skill tree. Now if you don't know what the Relic skill tree is, then it's a brand new branch of skills within your skill trees that specializes on enhancing your cyberware and has one difference to the regular skill trees, where you unlock nodes with relic points rather than attribute points like when you level up. And sadly, if you don't own Phantom Liberty, then you won't be able to access it until you own the expansion. Now unlocking the Relic skill tree, however, is very simple, since all you need to do is actually start Phantom Liberty. You'll go to the objective and meet a new character called Songbird, who will then unlock the Relic skill tree for you and also start you off with a few relic points to start unlocking some great upgrades. To unlock more relic points, you will then just need to explore certain locations in Dogtown and find Militech data terminals. Once you find one, just hack in and you'll unlock another relic point. These locations are sadly not marked on your map, but there are countless videos and images showing you the location of these online already, so just find one of those. The skills that come with the Relic skill tree are quite powerful and will change the way you play the game depending on your builds and cyberware. You can eventually unlock all of them, which we would recommend doing, but since you start off with a limited number of relic points, you need to know which skills to prioritize and unlock first. We will first go through the Relic skills before we rate them, just to help increase your understanding on why these new skills are so good. They are split into two types of nodes. The first is what I like to call the main nodes, which is more of a diamond shape, and then connecting to them are the sub-nodes that are closer to a square shape on the Relic skill tree. The first main node that we will talk about is called Jailbreak, which unlocks new abilities for cyberware that you use on your arms. This includes the Mantis Blades, Gorilla Arms, Projectile Launch System, and the Monowire. When it comes to the Projectile Launch System, if you hold down the fire button, you'll now be able to overcharge it, which launches a burst of 5 projectiles in a large area. Then, when you attack with Gorilla Arms, you'll be able to charge them up, and when fully charged, you can do a strong attack that will create a shockwave that will stagger and send nearby enemies flying. The Mantis Blade is quite interesting, as when you dismember or perform a finisher on an enemy, the Mantis Blades will then charge a leap attack that will let you move over 30 meters for longer range, and deals massive damage with a slash that can hit the targeted enemy and enemies nearby. You'll also be quite satisfied with this, as when an enemy dies, they will also be dismembered. Then lastly, the Monowire unlocks a dedicated slot for quick hacks, as you will first need to charge the Monowire. But once it's fully charged, you will release the attack to deal damage and upload the quick hack to enemies without having to use any RAM. Of course, this also means for this to be most effective, you will need one of the 4 cyberware parts that we just spoke about. The main next node is then a Vulnerability Analytics. This is probably one of my favorites, as you can detect new vulnerabilities in enemy armor and cyberware, so that when you hit them it gives 100% critical chance, 25% armor penetration, and triggers normal weak spot damage bonuses. Another cool feature is that when you do damage to one of the vulnerable spots, it will also cause a 3 meter EMP blast affecting all enemies in the area. The nice thing about this is though that you don't need any specific cyberware to make the most out of it, so it is usable in all builds. The third main node is then called Emergency Cloaking, and is quite an interesting one for you lovers of stealth, as you'll need to activate the optical camo cyberware during combat, then enemies will lose track of you, which makes leaving combat easier. You will however need to have the optical camo cyberware equipped. Now with that, we have covered all the main nodes, so let's move on to the subnodes, as these skills enhance the main ones that you have selected. Starting again with the nodes connected to Jailbreak, you first have Spatial Removal. This is where all leap attacks with the Mantis Blades will cripple enemies and increase the chance to dismember them for 10 seconds. You'll also need to have Mantis Blades for this once again. Then we have Limiter Removal, which allows you to knock down all enemies within a certain range when you hit them with the shockwave from a charged Gorilla Arms attack. As usual, you'll need to also have the Gorilla Arms equipped. After that, we have the Launch Capacity Override. This is where it will increase the number of charges your projectile launch system has by 1. You'll need to obviously have the projectile launch system equipped to make this one useful. Then lastly, we have data tunneling, which requires the monowire to be equipped. Here, when you have affected an enemy with the monowire, upload quick hack and hit that enemy, you'll be able to spread the quick hack to other enemies around them by simultaneously hitting them. Then moving back to the vulnerability analytics tree, you have the subnode machine learning. This will grant around a 10% chance of new vulnerabilities to appear and gives you around 5% critical damage against them every time you destroy a vulnerability. This will also last for 25 seconds in total and can be stacked up to 5 times. Doing so will then double the effect of the skill. Then for the last subnode, we are heading back over to the emergency cloaking tree, as this is called sensory protocol, which when you're crouched and being detected by an enemy, it will slow down time, and if you dodge or dash out of the enemy's line of sight, you will exit combat immediately. The only downfall here is that it has a cooldown of 120 seconds, which is 2 minutes. Now it is time to rank the Relic skill tree, which I'm sure you have all been waiting for, and we'll start with the main nodes before moving on to the subnodes. It is also important to remember that here we are ranking these on general use and builds, as certain skills might be great, but can be absolutely useless if you're not using the correct cyberware. Starting off with the vulnerability analytics, which is straight up in S tier. It is great for starting out with at the start of Phantom Liberty and improves your damage output due to hitting enemy weaknesses, and will help no matter which cyberware or builds you are running. Emergency cloaking is then another perk I would call S tier, as it helps players confuse enemies and allows you to strategize in certain situations, as the invisibility can be a great tool to help you escape fight and the police. Plus, it is just a general great tool for missions that require a stealthier approach. Of course, here the only drawback is that you will need the optical camo cyberware equipped. Then lastly, for the main perks, we have jailbreak, and I have to admit that if I didn't put this in S tier, it would be a crime, as it improves all ARM cyberwares, making more players want to use them, and allows for more variety in builds, since all ARM cyberware can now compete against each other. Now moving on to the sub-skills, we will start with the weakest and work our way up. In B tier, we have the launch capacity override. It just doesn't feel all too great compared to the other skills, since it doesn't increase the damage that your projectile launch systems does. However, it does allow you to keep shooting for longer since you have more charges. Then in A tier, we have data tunneling for the monowire, since you can easily spread quick hacks to multiple enemies. However, the drawback here is that you have to use the monowire and hit enemies simultaneously to actually spread the hack. We then have sensory protocol, which also sits in A tier. It is only really helpful in stealth situations when getting detected, but it is a nice skill in combination with emergency cloaking. We then have limiter removal, also in A tier, as knocking down enemies with your charged gorilla arms is a great way to introduce crowd control and allows you to deal with enemies while they are downed. The only drawbacks here is that it doesn't increase the damage you do, and it only works for the gorilla arms. Then lastly, in A tier, we have spatial mapping. This is for all of you Mantis Blade users out there, as it increases the chance to dismember enemies while also crippling them in the process. You will have to make use of the leap attack, however, as that is required to cripple enemies. Then moving back up to the S tier, we have machine learning. This one is just a great additional perk to vulnerabilities analytics, as you can stack crit damage from hitting those weak spots on enemies while adding new weak spots. This is then great when fighting enemies from normal people to larger bosses with larger health pools due to the increased damage output. Of course, however, when it comes to builds, this is dependent on your playstyle and which cyberware pieces you like to use. In general, these new skills and perks are excellent overall, and you now know which ones to prioritize. I know a lot of you still love to use the David Martinez and Lucy builds, especially with all the changes that they added with 2.0. So the Relic Tree skills work perfectly to enhance those types of builds that make use of cyberware in the best possible way. And in combination with your regular skill tree, I am sure to see specific builds specializing into one type of cyberware to make the most of them. I can then see Mantis Blades and Gorilla Arms being a very popular choice due to all the new features that are now available in the game, so I would recommend trying them out if you aren't a fan of using different cyberware. Overall, it's important to remember that you'll need to explore Dogtown to unlock more relic points to continue enhancing your cyberware and builds, as we have now covered everything that the new Relic skill tree does and which skills you should prioritize with your first few points. You have so much freedom in experimenting with unique builds, so I'm curious to know which builds you are actually going to use from the new Relic skill tree, so let me know in the comment section below. I also just want to say that if this video did help you, then please like, share, and subscribe for more Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty guides in the future, as we are having a blast with the expansion here at Realm Space Gaming. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you later.